The Oberth-class science vessel is a design which, well, I am rather fond of personally, was apparently detested by the visual effects team of the Next Generation, who utilized the USS Grissom model, which first appeared in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, as something of a punching bag, destroying numerous members of the class during the show's run. In fact, the Oberth became something of a redshirt for the series, being destroyed to prove that the situation the crew of the Enterprise found themselves in was indeed serious. In addition to its sad fate of being blown up for the advancement of plot, the Oberth has had a long and inconsistent history of just how large it is depicted on screen, with the ship being officially 120 meters long, but being shown at anything up to 300 meters long in various appearances. With so many inconsistencies with how large this class has been shown, the question has to be asked, well, it doesn't has to be, but I'm asking it, is it possible to square the circle and come up with a length which sits nicely in the middle and can be assumed to be the ship's true canon length? Well, to answer, rather, this somewhat pedantic, pointless, and perturbing question, we have to first go over the various depicted lengths and the issues with them. For the special effects of the film Search for Spock, Industrial Light and Magic was contracted, and they would be responsible for making the model of the Oberth class in its first appearance. And it is from their internal documentation that the size of the ship is first mentioned, this being 120 meters. And this has since become the ship's official length. So then, obviously, question solved. The Oberth is 120 meters long, and we can safely ignore any further sizes because the Oberth would obviously scale perfectly at 120 meters, and anything else shown on screen can be counted as a mistake. Sadly, no. And something of a pattern, the 120-meter official length of the Oberth is problematic. At this length, the ship is just way too small, with the design having barely sufficient room for 2 decks in the saucer, and these decks do not line up with the windows shown on the ship. The windows are a sticking point. At this length as well, the pylons connecting the main hull with the canoe? Secondary hull? Sensor pallet? The boat-looking thing beneath the upper half of the ship. It's too small to fit a regular turbolift pod, implying you either don't go into the pod, climb there via a very long and uncomfortable ladder, or use the transporter to get there. But back to the decks of the ship. At 120 meters, the decks would be no more than 2.5 meters tall, which clashes with every established shot of the ship's interior. Also, at this length, there is not room for the bridge to be located in the dome at the center of the saucer. To sum up, it's borked. Several times the Oberth has been depicted at being around 200 meters long. At this size, you can get 2 decks in the saucer, with the bridge perhaps raised to exist partially in the upper dome, with the computer core of the vessel below it. This length is not perfect. You still have issues with the windows not lining up. The windows are a sticking point. But it seems to jive with the best with everything that we see, allowing a full-size deck height, room inside enough for the small crew, while also allowing the ship to still be quite cramped. In several shots, the Oberth class is depicted at being as large as 300 plus meters. This length would allow us to have multiple decks in the saucer, 3 or 4 working comfortably. This is also where we see the ship being large enough to fit the bridge and the dome atop the saucer. At any smaller lengths, the ship is just too small for this to be possible. Several vessels have also been shown at roughly this scale, with internal decks visible on damaged members of the class showing as many as 4 saucer decks. Obviously, an Oberth being this large kind of defeats the ship's reason for existing, as this small, inexpensive, and cheap science vessel suddenly finds herself in the same size range as the Constitution II heavy cruiser, outmassing the Miranda class even. Far too much ship for a crew of 80 scientists and men. Okay, So there we have the official lengths of the ship, some of the issues with that length, and some of the rough other sizes that the ship has been shown at. Now we have to ask, what size would this ship work out at? What's the correct size for the ship? Well, I think that we can't rely on either the ship's off-screen official length of 120 meters, or its depictions in the shows and films. For starters, at 120 meters, the ship it doesn't work. Its on-screen appearances discount that fairly heavily, while the ship varies so much in size that there is little point relying on this evidence as well. So basically, on-screen shows one thing, which isn't really possible or makes sense, and then the ship's official length just does not make sense at all. It clashes with all internal sense and logic and on-screen evidence. So then how can we make this ship work? What do I, a random person on the internet, think about the ship's length? And is there something special I am planning on this topic for my Patreons? All good questions. That last one for a bit. For me personally, I think that the solution lies in compromise. Making the ship work as well as we can, and trying to find a middle ground between what was intended for the ship and what was shown on screen. So then, for me, the 200-meter length is what I go with when it comes to this ship. At about 200 meters, you have a sufficiently sized vessel to allow for 2 full-size decks in the saucer, room enough to fit a turbolift in the pylons to connect the upper and lower hulls together and allow easy travel. Furthermore, at 200 meters, you still have a ship which is small enough that you can believe a small 80-person complement and roll as a simple science vessel. To me, this just seems like the best compromise possible. That's not to say that everything works perfectly, the windows are still a sticking point, but it does all work out roughly. And that's what matters at the end of the day. So those are my thoughts on the ship. Issues with the Oberth size and how big it is that I think it ought to be. What do you think about the ship's size? Do you like the Oberth generally? This is a divisive ship. Let me know, of course, in a comment below. Also, huge thanks to the Ex Astra Scientia website. That's where I got a lot of the information about the ship's lengths. They go into much more detail. Dog bark. Why? They go into much more detail about this topic than I do. Apparently, Buster does not like the ship's length, or the Ex Astra Scientia website will. Apparently he just doesn't like it and is gonna bark, and there's nothing I can do. Anyway, yeah, good website. Despite the protestations of a dog, ignore him. He's illiterate. If you did like this video, dog barking at all, feel free to give it a like. Leave a comment as mentioned. Also, I have decided that I want to work out how the ship would work, and I think I'm going to build it in Minecraft. So if you support the channel on Patreon, I'm thinking of doing a video series detailing my build of the ship in Minecraft, planning it out. Minecraft is the best 3D modeling software I have. It works really well. I understand it. Yes, I have the mental acuity of like a 12-year-old, but it works, and I think I'm going to build it in Minecraft. It's going to be a bit blocky, but it's going to be a million times better than what I could do in 3D modeling. Now there's another dog barking. So support the channel on Patreon, and you can see that. I'm actually going to see what they're barking at now, so bye!